Well, Sandy always says I get carried away when I want to share the new you with people.
No, it's not that. When you sit on people, I say.
She thinks I'm sitting on people. She calls it sitting on people, and I'm trying to think of a good way to say that. It's like I've always been under the impression, and this gets back to the free will. People have the free will to make a choice, and I've always, been under the impression that in order for people to make a valid choice, they have to know what the options are. And it's like, my dad always used to tell me when I was a kid, he says, if a person comes up to you and wants to tell you something, it says, only a fool would not listen to a man before he would never say no to a person until he heard the person out. Only a fool would say they don't even want to hear it. That was my dad's advice growing up as a kid. And so, I mean, that kind of sunk into my personality. So, like, we talk about sharing the new you with people and giving them the option and ability to say, well, am I interested in the new you and getting out of creation and going back to the all is or staying in creation? I've always felt that in order for a person to make a proper decision, they need to hear the whole story. And so when I talk to people, I like to share the whole story. And Sandy says after about the first sentence, I'm sitting on people.
No. It's after they walk away and you're tracking them down yet and still dissertating on them. That's when I say you're sitting on them, because you're trying to convince somebody. You're not letting them have the free will or the options, or even to let something sink into themselves, whether they want to do it or not. You just keep after them.
So that brings up my point of at what point are we infringing on somebody's free will to reject the new presentation that we want to share with them? And what I mean is, and I know you've told me a lot of times I got to listen to everything that they say and watch them. And so at the first sign at the very instant, they give signs like they don't want to hear it. Sandy is saying, well, shut up.
Well, no, I didn't.
Well, she said, I'm sitting on people, but I always want to finish the content of what I'm trying to say. And
but you chase them down. Even when they walk away, you chase them down.
Well, so
that's the thing.
So according to Sandy, I really need to change my outlook on sharing it with people, and I'm beginning to agree with her. So, am I hurting myself by going overboard like that? Am I really causing problems for that people to learn the truth down the road, or what am I doing to people when I do that? I imagine it's really not good. It's just my zeal to share it, and I have not been as sensitive as I need to be when Sandy, as soon as I say something, Sandy will say, "Oh, stop," and
no, it's not as soon as you say something. It's like into the 15-minute or the 20.
Well, sometimes it's only 2 minutes.
No, it's not.
But anyway, that's what I'd like your feedback from. At what point do you, how much you give and when you, how much should we share with people and when do you stop? And if you go too far, what are the repercussions?
First of all, Sandy probably sees you like the bouncer, okay? So you're the guy that's going to take care of everybody. And you take care of them. And so we'll see how they end up. Maybe you'll see what happens in the newspaper. So I would read the newspaper daily and see what happens with these people after you talk to them. Also, another hint is if you talk to them and it gets kind of lengthy, which I understand, I'm lengthy myself, but it's on the Skypes. With regular people, I hardly say anything. A couple words, it's like, oh, okay, have fun. As soon as I listen to people and I listen to what they say, and I relate accordingly, and so that's how I do it. But it just depends upon what I'm going to do. Also, in the middle of let's say you're only 7.5 minutes into your 3.5-hour dissertation, and they pull out a gun, that's a hint also. So then you just put your hands up and walk away. But there's an old saying, all right, and it's in the scriptures. He will come as a thief in the night. Remember that one?
Yes.
Yes. What does that tell you? So, the boys, I've seen Rebazar and the boys. I remember this one time, right after I took the rod of power and having all these experiences, etc., in 2001. And one of them was on a little, very small inner seminar with Joni on the real side. And it was in Burbank. And I was sitting there with Joni, and she had kind of a rectangle table. It was like, it's like those big rectangle tables they have in board meetings. You got the big rectangle table. See, it's not a round table like the Knights of the Round Table. It's a rectangle. It's a control table. It denotes control because there's always someone at each head, and everybody else is looking on. They got to look to the right or to the left, don't they? Forward or back, but there's always somebody else at each end of the table. Usually, it's the CEO at the one end, etc. So I'm kind of on the side of the table. It's just me and her at the table. She's at the head of the table, and I have my feet on the table. And she's saying, get your feet off my table. So the feet is the physical part, okay, that's coming up because we're on the real side. But there were little bleachers in the room, too, just real small little bleachers. And about 4 or 5 steps up or whatever, and there were some people in there. Well, then all of a sudden, Rebazar and about 5 or 6 of the boys walk in. And Rebazar's hair is all combed back, long, and then kind of wavy, and it kind of waves out into wings on the side. Well, they came in totally silent, very slow and casual. And they just kind of looked around and moved through the people and then kind of moved out, etc. So, yeah, but this is the physical. This is the hard part. So I've done that too. I've sat and drowned people in the past, but I don't do it anymore. But again, you're going to figure that out, and everything you're doing is okay. So actually, the way I see it, no matter what we do, and we're not abrasive at all. It's just words that we're saying here. We're not carrying weapons, and we don't have an agenda to take over a country or blow somebody up. So there's a difference. Okay, so we're just doing words here. So I would say for the most part, yes, it gets a little annoying, and you've heard it before, but it's a lot of repeating. But at the same time, I see it is that people are very fortunate we're here, because if we weren't, they wouldn't have anything. So let them be agitated, okay? Just like Bill's experience. Fine. It's like, okay, just like Bill was very kind and very real. That's really cool what Bill did. I would probably be a little more so, because Ava and I, and everybody's going to do it their own way. When the Ekis would come on board and on chats on Facebook and whatever, I'd all of a sudden let them know that, hey, Joni's reptilian, and that Harold's the puppet master, etc. So I would really kind of get in their face, all right? And see, they would be chatting with Ava, and in the beginning years, she didn't know what to say, so I'd write it out for her, and then they thought that she was talking to them, but I'd write it out, and then she would go, oh, this is a bomb, this is a bomb. But after a while, what was funny is she would say, oh, I don't want to say this. No, I can't say this. And I go, just say it, okay? Just go ahead and do it. But after a while, as the year 1 and year 2 and year 3 went by, all of a sudden, now Ava's doing it. And I said, well, Ava, that's kind of hard or whatever. Oh, no, it's fine. I'll do it. Now she's doing it. she steps up and lets them know. But she's kinder than I am. Okay, I don't look to kindness, but I really do. I'm very considerate of people, but at the same time, it's like, let's see what they say when we bug them. Okay, because again, hey, it's like, hey, you're driving off the end of the road. Are you sure you want to do that? I'll stand there by the cliff right there and try to wave people down. I have before on the real side. I'm waving people as they're driving by, but they're just whizzing by. They just want to go as fast as they can into the future and finally hit the wall. So again, at what point do you do whatever? So Bob, you're doing fine. At least you're doing something. Most people, they do nothing. They're afraid to do something. You're not afraid to step up. You've proven it. And so again, just like the experiences that you had before the seminar, the boys were showing you were doing depth charges and all this stuff. Well, that's what it is. It's a wake up, to all those people in the submarines under there, you see? And so they make choices. Hey, they can get ornery, they can get pissed off, they can get whatever, but also they can all of a sudden go, wow, maybe I should look at this. It's an opportunity. They're lucky we're here. Because if nobody's trying to wake them up, guess what? They're not going to wake up. So there's the difference. So it's a give and take. But all the years that I was out there, like 30 years in the public, yeah, I was a little pushy and whatever, and kind of like a used car salesman at times. But each time that I did that, I would look at myself and refine it and refine it. Now, the Skypes are different. I'm not talking to the public. I'm talking, you might say to people, and this is not matter of fact, that know better. You know certain things. You've come through certain things. You know what cause and effect is. You know certain ideas, etc. So now you're into the real position. It's kind of like this is the boot camp we're in, and you're not with your mommy anymore making cupcakes, okay, and where everything's sweet and rosy. Now you're getting ready to face the world, and the world's very real. And the real world, not the world that you'd like it to be, all cute and cozy and whatever, or you get to go to the store and buy your cupcakes and the snacks you want. The real world is out to destroy you, and you see that. That's why you got the chemtrails, the Wi-Fi, and whatever. That's the real world, but people pretend it's not. So what you're doing in your own way, yeah, you're going to bother others. You're going to bother Sandy too. And she has free will to leave the room and go ice skating or whatever. So again, yeah, it's very interesting, and that is that, yeah, free will's a bitch, or it can be whatever you decide, and we can each do whatever we want, etc., and how we want to present it. But I, for myself, over the years, every time I go out and do a lecture or something or have a meeting, I'd come back and I'd look over what I said, and then I'd look over and kind of redo it and refine it, you see. But as we're in the Skypes, it's a little more wild because, again, this is boot camp. Just like all the guys in the barracks, this is what we are. And then we go out there on maneuvers and whatever. Again, you're facing the world. And that takes courage to do that. That takes great courage to do that. So, no, everything's fine. You'll figure it out.
Thank you.
What's kind of interesting is back in the days when I was teaching full time, and I would bring up, off the wall topics with people, and I shared things like, my flyby with the Pleiadians and all that kind of, I'd share off the wall stuff with people, and they look at me cross-eyed and tell me how crazy I was, and they didn't want to hear it. And 5 years later, they came back to me and they said, I thought you were crazy, but I found out everything you were saying is true, and thank you for sharing it. I can't tell you how many times that's happened.
Well, it's going to happen too with those people. It's going to take a few minutes at the seminar as example. So you've touched them, you see, and we've all touched certain people and done certain situations. So as, just sharing out there in the world, like I showed you kids and what Kelsey does and everybody else, that's a big media. That's a big medium going out there and touching the world. And it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's like a storm. It's like surfing. It's like a storm. The storm is brewing out there. But it takes time for those waves to eventually, get to the other side of the world. It may take a few days or a week, but eventually they come to shore. And hey, all the surfers are there. They know the waves are coming. They jump out in the water. because they saw the indicators of the swell and they're ready to surf. You see, they're ready. But until they reach there to particular to where they are ready, they're not. So it's the same way. So, and because we're rather more justified with how forward we are up front, simply because, and we're not really abrasive. It's how the individual takes it. We're not doing anything abrasive. Doesn't even matter if I cuss and swore every other word. That's not abrasiveness. Those are words, and it is how the individual themselves interpret it, what is being said. That becomes the difference. So when I watch movies, and I watch all the dastardly ones because I like these things and intrigue and thrillers and all this stuff, and a lot of people are bothered by it. I'm not. I'm indifferent to it because I see that I look for certain things in situations. They're documentaries to me, so it doesn't bother me. It's how I interpret it. But some people, they don't want to see it. It's like, I can't see all this killing and whatever. Well, I don't really look at it like that. It's just how you look at it. I see it as a process that the individual goes through, and especially if there's a hero, there's always a hero in the movie, and the process that he's going through, and at the same time, what is the view? And so, it's very interesting, our experience in creation, and it can be anything at all. It just happens to be this. And when Paul brought out what he did, Eckankar, he created the whole scenario. He created the whole movie with it. Well, that's the old movie. This is the new movie right now that we're creating to see who wants to wake up, because we have the real connection with the all is the true reality. And you can see that everybody in the old movie, they're just lost in the physical astral aspects of basically their sensations and their attachments to ideas. So is there a difference? So this is where you become creative, and at times it's going to seem like you're a little bit heavy, etc. But I like to bring things in that kind of wow people, and I like to see what they say. And lots of times they'll just say, "Well, that's conspiracy theory," and I'll bother them too. I'll say, "Oh, you made that up, didn't you? You were the one that thought that idea up. Great idea, etc." I'll build them up, is what I'll do. I'll build them up, you see. And that kind of bugs them a little bit too. I like to kind of bug people a little bit with things, and I want to see what they will do, because you know what? Everybody that's walking around here does not see what the world really is. This is a completely dangerous place, absolutely. And everybody walking around is unconscious, and they have this chance to wake up right now. And who knows how long it's going to be here? Who knows how long we're going to be on the Skype? You don't. You see, because we don't control the Skype. We're on the Skype, but it is controlled, and it's very real. It's a very real wake up. So it's kind of like your idea of being out in the middle of the desert. When everything is off, Bob, what do you do then? You see? So again, yes, it's seeing the world as it really is, not what we think it is, to where, like the business world, and most people think it's just going to keep going on and on and on. It can, but at the same time, it can't. So there's always the variables there. So are you seeing all these views aside from your personal self and how you want life to be? You see? Yeah, there's always a lot more. So what you're doing is fine. What you're doing is really nothing. But it bothers your wife, so you got to deal with that.
She's ready to kick me out.
No, I'm not.
Did anyone see the, why isn't anybody talking about this picture of a big beam hitting the sun and its reaction?
No. Explain.
Oh, I don't know what's to explain. It just has a picture of a great big beam all of a sudden hitting, it looked like right into the center from the right side of the sun, and the sun reacted. It didn't seem to have enough effect to blow it up or anything, but that was just something I saw on that. Why isn't anybody talking about this?
Well, about 2 weeks ago, I saw somewhere on the internet, people were talking about, and I think even the sky telescope guy, Dr. Sky, said that a satellite probe was being sent right into the center of the sun, and it was supposed to arrive about this time, and they were waiting to get the feedback on what was going to be revealed by that satellite probe. So maybe what you're talking about had something to do with that probe that was sent, and I think it was sent by the U.S. government a long time ago, and it's just now arriving. So it could be something to do with that.
It sure was a big beam that came from the right side all of a sudden, and then was it lasted like for a second of the whole beam. It was big. But anyway.
Was it projecting out from the sun or in toward the sun?
In towards the sun.
So maybe that craft that the government sent was maybe it had a huge particle beam weapon or something, and that, you know, like one of those HARP type of things, and they're shooting it at the sun to see what the effect would be. You know, because they do crazy things like that.
Maybe it was the is recharging the sun for us.
There you go.
Anybody see that big plume off in Mars? There's a 600-mile plume, like a volcanic eruption off one part of Mars where there's a volcano. So that was going around the internet a couple days ago.
About her seeing these reptilians and when that began in her life.
You know, for years and years and years and years, I never thought they existed, quite frankly. And I kind of just poo-pooed the idea, right?
Yeah, even I tried to.
Even Bob, you know, was telling me about them. I said, yeah, I want to see them. I have to see them to believe them.
I gave him David Icke's book.
Yeah, I gave me David Icke's book, and I finally read it. And all of a sudden, it wasn't really too long after was it? It
was like 2 or 3 months ago.
2 or 3 months ago. Well, when I got into the new you, I started to see them. And I was as amazed as anybody else because I really didn't have the thought I want to see these things. They just appeared. And now I'm seeing them a lot. I don't think about seeing them. They're like the one the other day in the grocery store. It was just there, jauntily walking. It was very, very tall. It just was the regular reptilian. All I saw was the back of him, but he or she, I don't even know what it was jauntily walking down the aisle by the meat counter.
Tell them how big it was.
Yeah, it was very, very tall, almost to the ceiling. I mean, it was huge. So that's when I started seeing them. And then the one lady that visits every now and then with her pretty beads and her lipstick, she actually will converse with me. I don't see her all the time, but every now and then I do. And there was that one Skype session we had where she actually sat down in a chair in our living room and listened. So that's kind of the start of it.
And then the jillions that you saw at the seminar.
Oh yeah, there's too many to even talk about from the seminar. They were everywhere, absolutely everywhere. But that's kind of how that kind of came about.
There's a lot more, we'll say, insights or information is growing all the time about the Vatican's involvement with the reptilian. There's some real interesting stuff about the hats that you see them wear over different periods of time that are very high and elongated in the back, so they can hide that part of their head that they didn't want anybody to see.
Mhm.
There's also a bunch of full life in the archive areas in the Vatican. There are full size reptilian figures in those archives. And there's even some pictures of them on the walls inside the private chambers of the Pope.
You know, if you look at some of those ancient Egyptian pictures and hieroglyphics and stuff, the ones that have the pictures on, there is almost a Vatican-like shaped hat on their heads. A lot
Absolutely.
of them.
Same thing.
Yep.
By the way, the out there at Denver, the underground city and under the Denver airport, there have been a number of eyewitnesses that have watched the 8 or 9 foot tall Draco reptilians going in and out of the elevators, going down to the underground complexes. And it's kind of interesting as they have been observed wearing coats, you know, like trench coats like Dracula would wear. And they said that these reptilians might have even had wings on their back, and they were using the drapes to cover over their wings. Well, I thought that was kind of interesting.
You mean their cloaks?
Their cloaks, yeah. They cover, the reason they wore the cloaks was to cover the wings on their back. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like to watch the sunsets and see a spiral of colors as it's going down a lot of times.
Yeah, I love them too myself. I used to do a lot of sunsets and whatnot when I lived in Hawaii and when I lived in Florida. They're pretty. They're beautiful. Used to even take pictures of them.
That's one of the perks of my job. I get to see the sunrises, the sunsets, and the moonrises, you know, right at work. So yeah, I love to see that.
On a light note, Claudia, you be careful. Don't do that hewing into the sun with a bunch of Republicans around. They might think you're a crazy Democrat just screaming at the sky.
We don't scream at the sky. We just watch all you crazy liberals scream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see on the sunsets.
Yeah.
The sun looks oblong, fat across the equator. But I think I've always attributed that to atmospheric distortion. You know. Maybe
not.
But if it's not atmospheric distortion, then I'm not sure what it would be. By the way, I just read something. I don't know if it was something one of you guys sent out, but you're all familiar with Google Earth, right? Well, somebody said that they've had satellites going around the moon so long that now they have the Google Moon, and they're starting to let the public see the all around the moon, just like they do all around the Earth with Google Earth. You can look at all the craters close up, and so I just saw that this morning for the first time. So if anybody wants to check out those cities on the backside of the moon, I think it's becoming available now. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, they've had that all blocked off for a very long time. They really don't want people to see what's back there.
True.
They need to come out with a Google Mars too.